Before we dive into a new Antec case and review, of course, let's just do this first. So quite satisfying. Now, today we're going to talk about Antec DP31, which is a micro ATX case and can really actually give you guys quite enough space for everything that you need. So today we're going to talk about micro ATX case from Antec, and let's dive in. So first of all, the case comes with one 120mm fan right at the back, no front fans unfortunately, and when it comes to visual designs, completely different front. Again, of course, with some grill here that can be used as an intake, and we have an RGB light right here on the front, which does look quite cool and a bit of a different design, I would say. So this is DP, stands for Dark Phantom, and this is their series that they have a couple of series, so we can go with that. Now, tempered glass, how is it removed? And this is what I prefer. You just pull the lever and you open the tempered glass. To remove it completely, you just slide it up, and here we go. So clear to do whatever you wish right here inside this case. Now, I decided to remove the back fan, which was originally non-RGB, and use their Prism 120 addressable RGB fans, one at the rear and two at the front. Now, I thought I could squeeze three 120mm on front, but there's basically no possibility. In other words, it gives you a possibility to arrange them as you wish, so you can push them on top, slide them on bottom, and you can go with two 140mm or two 120mm. The same thing goes for the radiator support, so you can go with 120, 140, 240 or 280mm radiator. On top it supports only 120mm fans, so two of those on top, and at the back I already said everything. Now, on the power supply shroud, I don't see any threads in these holes. Actually I do, so you can place two 120mm fans on the power supply shroud to get more air, I would say. There's a cutout here for the power supply, so if you have a signature platinum from Antec like I do, it's quite nice to see some extreme power supply here. If you don't like it, well, basically then just use some sort of a material to cover it up, but I don't think there's any point in doing that. Now, the front here has a cutout on the power supply shroud, so you can place the radiator normally, and the fans are on the front part of the chassis, so you don't have to worry about losing too much space for your graphic card. Since we're already mentioning the graphic card, the total length of the GPU can be up to 300mm, but that's actually a quite tight fit, and if you decide to place a radiator on front, you lose at least 2.5 centimeters, so we're already at 27.5 centimeters of GPU length with the radiator, and that's quite close to radiator, so to be sure 270mm is quite alright. Now, when we're talking about CPU tower clearance, so CPU tower cooler height, this is the NH-U12A with Chromax NA-HC7 Chromax black swap, which gives actually 1 centimeter of height. I think it's 1 centimeter, and it can fit quite nicely, so you're good to go. I would say around 165mm of CPU tower clearance. Quite outstanding for such a case, actually quite small case, I would say. Now, the power supply and the power supply shroud. I placed the signature platinum 1000 watts, and the length of it is 170mm. Now, you have a hard drive cage at the bottom, which can accommodate one 3.5-inch hard drive and one 2.5-inch SSD. If you remove it, you have loads of space at the bottom. Since we're using most of the time SSDs and only few hard drives, this time I removed it. If you have a motherboard, for instance, like I do, You can accommodate two M.2 SSDs on the motherboard, and at the back you have another caddy for 2.5-inch SSD. So there's quite loads of maneuver here that you could do, and the power supply fits perfectly inside. So yeah, cage can be removed without bending the power supply shroud or doing any crazy stuff. Talking about openings inside the case, we have two openings here on the side next to your motherboard, so the 24 pin actually goes straight to the opening and there's no bending on 24 pin cable. So this is really cool, and finally a case that actually has this. You have a cutout below that one for SATA, for USB 3.0, but it's not perfectly aligned. So this is, you get some and you lose some, so I would say that's quite alright. At the top you have an opening for the cables that go from the front I/O port, which has the power on button, has the LED button which controls this right here, the LED strip on front. You have two USB 2.0, two 3.5mm jacks, one is for your headset and one is for your microphone, and one 3.0 USB. Quite alright. Now here at the back you have also a nice opening for EPS connection and for the rear fan, so you could maneuver again, and basically that's it. The opening for the cables that are coming from the front I/O panel can be used for, I don't know, for instance, addressable RGB headers or PWM headers, stuff like that. At the power supply shroud at the back you have two openings again, and you can reroute the cables, I don't know, HD audio, USB 2.0 or anything similar to that. Now I want to turn it on first before we continue into the video at all. So yeah, two fans at the front, one at the back, Noctua, that's it. Now for this build I wanted to go with something smaller in terms of, I didn't want to go with a huge graphic card. And finally something different on the channel, we have the Sapphire Radeon RX 6600 Pulse graphic card, which is just quite nice to have something different on the channel. And then for the processor we have the AMD Ryzen 5 5600G. Now in this terms I had to test it, of course, so AIDA 64 Extreme Edition on full load on both CPU and GPU. Quite outstanding actually, since we have half of the front panel cut off and no usage of it at all, so only the bottom part is basically an intake. The GPU went up to 70 Celsius degrees and it stayed there for the benchmark, lasted about half an hour, and the AMD Ryzen 5 5600G went up to 65 Celsius degrees. Noctua does take loads of credit for it, but I would say it's quite alright when we take everything into consideration. And quite cool combination as well. So the temperatures are, when we're talking about the case, the design, the front panel, the openings, is quite alright. Usually I think maybe a couple of degrees less would be if the opening on top was most likely just for the processor, not for the graphic card, because the graphic card is in the exact length here somewhere around, so it kind of gets enough cold air. So this is it, guys. I mean, at the back you have a nice amount of cable management possibilities. You can reroute the cables quite nicely, do whatever you wish, make a nice front side, and yeah, the steel thickness is around a millimeter, I would say, nothing spectacular, but then again we're talking about a budget case and a nice tempered glass with 2.5 millimeter of thickness, which I think it's also quite alright. So guys, yeah, I mean, you have a door for tempered glass, you don't have to worry about any thumb screws. This is less, I would say, toolless window for sure, and it does look quite solid. So all in all, I'm quite satisfied with the case when we take into consideration the budget, the price. Shame it doesn't have at least one fan on the front. That would be quite okay. If we're talking about a budget case, you don't have to invest in front fans, but unfortunately you do. Temperatures are quite solid, and believe me, the 70 Celsius degrees on this GPU and 65 on this processor in synthetic benchmarks, so in AIDA 64, is more than you will get in gaming, because not all games push the graphic card and the processor up to 100% load. That's cool. Quite satisfied for the price and the looks and the design and the spaciousness. Yeah, spaciousness. So check out the links below for the Antec DP31. More information there as well. And of course, to support the channel, click the subscribe button, like the video, hit the notification bell, and hopefully, well, I will see you in another one. Bye bye.